So today I'm going to be reacting to a vibe code hater. This is modern software engineering, and he does not like vibe coding.
On February the 2nd this year, Andrej Karpathy, an OpenAI founder and formerly head of AI at Tesla, introduced a new term for a style of programming with AI assistants. He called it vibe coding. Now, I'm no stranger to the ideas of too long didn't read and semantic diffusion, but I think that this might have been some kind of record. This was a 1,000-character tweet, and it seemed that few people even got to the second half. Andrej describes what he means by vibe coding in the first 300 or so characters of a 1,000-character tweet. The rest describes some of the consequences of this naive toy town approach to programming. Now, I don't know Andrej personally, so I can't tell what he had in mind with his tweet, but it reads to me as sarcasm. Near the end of the tweet, he says, "It's not too bad for throwaway weekend projects, but it's not really coding. I just see stuff, say stuff, run stuff, and copy and paste stuff, and mostly it works." So I think that vibe coding is at least up for the prize of the worst software idea of the year so far.
So there's a trend of these boomers who want to kill all humans because they hate their lives. They've been coding regularly for 30 years, and it's very frustrating for them to see that a literal child can write an application in 20 minutes. So when Karpathy says that this is great for throwaway projects but not really coding, what he's saying is that he doesn't have to do the work, so it doesn't feel like coding. Personally, I love vibe coding, and this is the hill I will die on, because the fact that I can tell ChatGPT or Claude or Google Gemini what I want to see on the screen and just have it created for me without writing any code myself is very powerful. But the way I do it is not going to be as foolish and immature as someone who has no idea what they're doing. My goal is to save time. I don't want to grind out huge classes and type things by hand when AI can implement it. I instead will tell the AI exactly what I want it to do, and then it's going to do those things.
We've built a technical recruitment industry on this premise that the defining characteristic of a good programmer is the set of languages and frameworks that they know. We have people who define their jobs by the tools that they use. I'm a Java programmer, I'm a React developer, and so on. I've admitted before that I have hired programmers who haven't used the same technology that we were using on a project, and I've never regretted that so far. In my experience, you can learn a programming language if you're good at programming, enough to get by with it in a few days, maybe a couple of weeks. Doing software development well is hard, very hard, but the difficulty is not created by programming languages. So let's think about the starting point in Andrej's.
So again, this is seethe and cope. Like, he's saying it's hard. I mean, again, if I was this guy, I would be frustrated too, because your whole industry's changing and you spent your whole life committed to learning how to do these things, and now any idiot can pick up code and just start doing it.
We can give in to the vibes and forget that the code even exists. Well, the other group of people that do that are the sometimes non-technical people who want to achieve something via a computer. Up to now, though, we human programmers have played the role of the coding assistant in this conversation, translating what it is that they want into something that works. So how well does that usually go? Not so well, I'd argue. Certainly very poorly for any software of any size or complexity. This often goes very poorly indeed.
And that's the fundamental difference between someone like me and somebody who has no clue what they're doing. You have to learn the design patterns behind what you're doing. You have to know the language that the AI needs to hear to implement your ideas. For example, if I say, hey, this is my Svelte front end, I want you to build me a form. I want it to take the username, the password, and I want the password to be encrypted with a JWT token. If you don't know what that is, you're going to ask for something and it might be insecure. If you do know what a JWT token is and you have a backend, say in FastAPI, and you say, use the backend file to check the JWT login pattern and ensure that the token is securely given to the client and expires in 24 hours. That is exactly the kind of language you need to use. If you go into this and you're completely ignorant about how the code works, you're going to be able to make a mess and you might get some results, but you're probably going to run into bugs, confusion, or insecure practices that derail your project. which is why you should subscribe to my channel, because I teach how to vibe code effectively without running into those problems.
So far, we humans are still smarter than the machines. This isn't because it's so difficult to translate what people want into a programming language. It's because it's so hard to break problems down into the precise, deterministic instructions that, LLM or not, are still how computers ultimately work.
He's totally right here. Like, that is exactly the correct answer. Like, if you don't know what you're trying to do and you're vague about it, the AI isn't going to work well. So if you are a non-technical founder, you need to think of yourself as somebody instructing a developer to work on your behalf. And you need to learn how to talk with that developer. The same exact problem would happen even if you hired a very smart team of software engineers and some executive who's going to run the team, some project manager who's going to run the team. If you are imprecise about what you want, you're going to ask for things that either they're going to take way too long to do it, they're going to overbill you, and or they're going to build the wrong thing because you didn't know exactly what your application needs to do. And there's no shortcutting that. You actually do have to learn how these components all come together to formulate the user experience. You can't get around that. And not just the user experience, also the back end. You have to have some understanding of, like, what's the point of having a server that the front end talks to? Like, when I was starting out, I used the MERN stack because I thought that was going to be a great place to start. I was ignorant, though. I didn't realize that writing your entire server in JavaScript was really dumb. Again, if you're new here, do not do this. Writing a server in JavaScript makes it hard to maintain. You deal with these what's the technical term? Wishy-washy evaluations for expressions. This is the kind of stuff that you really don't want to have to be fussing with if you're dealing with a server that needs to process complex logic like Stripe integration for payments and authorizing users and tracking the usage of your different API endpoints, which is why I highly recommend learning some fast API.
So vibe coding is not even close to being the right answer, really. Another example of humans attempting to achieve clarity and precision with natural language is the law. And if you've ever had to read any legal document for any purpose at all, I think you'll agree with me that this is not really what we might hope for in terms of clarity and precision. We can think of the act of programming from a variety of different perspectives. I'm sure that the most common way to think of this is probably to think of the act of writing code in a programming language. But I am somewhat skeptical of the utility of this.
If I was wanting to create law documents, I wouldn't hire a lawyer right away. What I would do is I would tell an AI, hey, here's my use case, here are the legal ramifications, here are my questions, here are the laws. And I would be very specific about what I was trying to accomplish. I'd get some kind of response or document back. I might ask another AI, hey, does this sound like it meets these objectives? I would personally go and ask an AI, hey, what are the kinds of things that a lawyer might need to review about this? What do lawyers do exactly with these sorts of documents? How do they proofread it? How do they know if it is legally correct and that sort of thing? And I would deeply familiarize myself with what a lawyer does and ensure that I understood it, to ensure and clarify that the LLMs are actually writing the document that I need and that all of the jargon and legal this and that are all correct. And I would probably get a final opinion from a lawyer. But he's only going to charge me for an hour or two to review these documents because he didn't have to write any of them. The same thing is what I did when I was learning to code. I would hire developers and I would say, hey, how can I solve this bug? And instead of you just doing it for me, show me how to do it. And I only ended up spending a few $100s to get some really high quality answers from experts about stuff that LLMs had written or code bases that I had downloaded from other people. And I was able to really quickly learn how developers think about these problems, how they approach them, and then of course, how to better prompt my AI to ensure that I was getting the correct results.
So my idea that the definition of high quality in software is defined by how easy it is to change is, I think, rather important because we must nearly always be able to change it. This highlights the importance of ideas like continuous integration and continuous delivery for building complex software systems. To me, this is independent of whether or not we use AIs to write the code. AIs, though, don't write code the way that we do. Most of them generate the code from.
And I'm going to stop him right there because AI can write code the way you write code. You just have to know how to do it and tell it to do it that way. Now, for me, I don't really like writing code. It's hard to remember all the syntax for all these languages, and I don't have to remember that because I have the AI to do it. Now, I personally will always read the code, almost always, to ensure that it's working. And if the AI gets stuck or is going through a bug, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to start asking very specific questions about what the code is doing so that I personally understand it, so that I can solve the problem by giving the AI the prompt that it needs to solve the code. Understanding some basic things like race conditions, user authentication, some basic patterns for programming languages, and how maybe memory is managed, or how blocking operations or asynchronous operations could, block people from being able to log in while someone else is doing another thing. Having a basic understanding of that and telling the AI, hey, make sure that this function that you write on the fast API is going to be asynchronous so that people can use it while the server is also doing other things. That's really critical. You have to have some understanding of how it works. Otherwise, you are going to be stuck making spaghetti code that no one can maintain or add or subtract from. So that's all I'm going to cover for this video. I wanted to make it because I think vibe coding is amazing. You do have to have some experience to understand the way that these things work. But for a non-technical founder, I highly recommend that you learn the basics of design patterns. Install Python in your computer, spin up a fast API template. There's actually a link in the description to my School community where you can get a simple design pattern, which is the backend being fast API for your user authentication. It connects to a PostgreSQL database to store all of your data. It's lightning fast, and of course it has a svelte front end to capture that user login. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave me a comment if you have any questions about how to get started vibe coding, and you can check out some of my other videos. I have that full tutorial about how to set up that fast API front-end, back-end infrastructure I just talked about, all the codes in the School community, etc. And if you'd like to help test out ChatGPT Killer, I'd love for you to check it out and be one of the very first users. It's an insanely powerful app that allows you to bring in your favorite YouTube videos. Maybe you found a video on how to be a better entrepreneur, like from Alex Ramosi, or some journal entry about how you can change your identity. You can pull that all under one roof and start to ask those questions of, hey, how do I really transform myself? And it will read the responses back to you, and you can also talk into it. Whew. Okay, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that like button if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next Vibe Code tutorial.